Welcome to today's training on Dotloop. Dotloop is your all-in-one transaction management system. This is where you're going to find your contracts, be able to create e-signatures, send your files to title companies, the agent on the other side, and more. You do not need to buy a subscription, nor go out on the World Wide Web and buy a free trial, because you already have a Dotloop LPT account. By the way, every Tuesday at 10, I also do a live video of Dotloop start to finish, as well as there will be another version of this video available for you in the knowledge base that will not be connected to this video, which you must pass a test at the end in order to have access. Once you've passed the exam, you will be registered for an LPT Dotloop account. You will receive your registration link in your LPT email. You're going to click on the link and log in using your LPT Realty email. No need to go out on the World Wide Web. So you'll get the Dotloop and you'll come into it and you'll click on the Get Started button. Then what you're going to do is you're going to go through and fill out this form. And once that's filled in, on the next screen, you'll see this. And it's going to say that LPT has added you to their company and wants to make this as your Dotloop default. Please click that button and set it as the default. This is especially important if you've worked with Dotloop before and maybe you just left another real estate company and had another Dotloop account. You'll still have access to those old loops, but you want to make this your default account. Once you come in, you can hover underneath your profile. This is still a screenshot. And understand that Dotloop has its own tech support department, and it is a third-party product. So if you need tech help, they're the best people to call, or click on the Help Center link, and underneath your name, you will have your identification number. Just make sure that's handy so that you can help them. Did you know you've already probably received a loop? Yes, you have, and it's connected to your account. That is the loop for your W-9 and the ability for you to get paid at industry-leading speeds, including direct deposit. So you want to fill out these forms as soon as you can so that when you have your first closing with LPT Realty, you get paid right there at the table. All right. So we're going to start in Dotloop. We're going to actually go into the MLS. You always are pulling your information from the MLS. You have to join a board and be part of the MLS within 60 days of joining. So please make sure that you've gotten that set up. And once you come in here, what you're going to do is you're going to come in and you're going to look for the listing that your buyer is interested. We're going to pretend we're writing a contract for a buyer. And so I have a buyer that's interested in this condo. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the MLS number and I'm going to take it, and now I'm going to switch and I'm going to change over into, I would go into LPT Connect and I can sign into Dotloop right here on LPT Connect. However, I'm already opened my Dotloop, so I'm just going to go to it right from here. So now that I know that I'm in the correct profile, I look over here, I make sure it's my default profile of LPT Realty, especially if you have other Dotloop accounts from the past. And I'm going to come in here now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a loop. So to get started, you click on the blue Add a Loop button, and now I'm going to start going through these 4 steps. I'm going to copy and paste this property in here. And notice I waited a second, and what happens is that the listing agent popped up underneath. So I can now go and pull this from here. The reason you do this with the MLS number is because now it's going to pull the information from the agent on the other side. And as I said, today's example is going to strictly be a buyer loop. Next, I know I'm in the right profile when I see a drop down and I have the LPT templates that I need to select from. So because this is a condo, we're going to select purchase condo. But you can see all the different buyer contract packages. We also have a referral in here. We also have the listings for residential, condo, and vacant, as well as tenants. So I'm going to select condo for my example today. And next we're going to hit continue. Step 3 is an optional step. Sometimes when I select a listing, the listing populates, the exterior front populates from that MLS. Or you could upload the exterior front picture yourself if you wish to, but we do not require it at LPT. I'm going to go on to step 4 and click done. All right, and now we have it. So we selected the purchase package. Now we're going to put the status in, which in this case is pre-offer. Eventually, we hope it's going to go to under contract and then sold. Sometimes the deal will fall apart and we might just terminate it. And then other times, for instance, if it was a listing that was asked to be taken off the market before it was expired, we'd list it as withdrawn. But let's just go with what this really is, which is a pre-offer. Now my buyer has asked to lowball this. I'm going to put the price in. And then I'm going to select a closing date. And again, you want to think about holidays and factor those different things in of where you're at, what's going on, so that you don't put a closing in a situation that's going to fall on a holiday. And again, if you click on the calendar and it cuts itself off, just scroll down so that you find it. Okay, and now we're going to click on the button called View Loop. The first thing that you're going to notice is that it's got folders. So you might say, well, why is the sales document folder empty? Well, we actually put the most commonly used contract in the third folder, which is called Documents You Might Need. You see here, that's the residential sale contract for purchase. But the reason we leave this empty is because guess what? Sometimes that's not the correct form to use. Sometimes people are going to be wanting you to, let's say, use the regular FAR bar repair limits contract. Or perhaps before you start working with a buyer, you like them to sign a buyer agency agreement. Well, where would you find that form if you don't see it in the sales docs? And for instance, you don't see it in Documents You Might Need. Well, you're going to go and get other documents that you might need for your contract under the Add Document button. It's kind of like a breadcrumb trail. You have to follow me. So you go Add Documents, then you go to Add Templates, and then we're going to go to what's known as Florida Interactive Forms. That's the sequence. Okay, so let's just go through that again. Add Documents, Templates, scroll down a little bit, and find Florida Interactive Forms. If it's the first time you're in Florida Interactive Forms, it may ask you for your sales license and your MLS ID number that you use to log into the MLS to prove that you qualify to use these forms, because only licensed active realtors can have access to them. So once you do that, you may have to log out of the Dotloop and then log back in for them to load properly. But once you do, it starts with 1031 exchange and it's A through Z. Now, I'm going to give you an example. So instead of getting the repair limits contract, I'm going to get that buyer agency agreement. So I want to give you an example. There are multiple exclusive buyer agency agreement. I'm looking for transactional broker. But what you have to do is you have to hover over the titles to see the full title. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but that's the way that it works. And so what I'm looking for is the transaction broker one. So I'm going to copy that. I do this for all of my buyers. Buyers have to work with me for a period of time, and they have to sign the buyer agency agreement. Otherwise, I won't work with them. Now, you may not want that in that position, or you would like have the first thing that everybody sees is the as-is residential contract for sale. Well, you can pull the as-is contract for sale out of there and throw it into the sales documents, and then put this on there as the second document. That's easy. You also can select any documents that you might need, pulling out of this section and throwing them up into the sales document folder, or you can leave them in the documents you may need. As long as you add what is needed to the contract, that's all we care about. If you're the kind of person that doesn't like extra things in here that don't apply to you, like for instance, this is not a pre-1978 house. Did you know you can click on these 3 dots and you can actually archive that? You can't get rid of anything, but you can archive it. So that's fine. That's how you can handle that. As I said, in reality here, we would also need to download any seller's disclosure type documents, right? So Simon says, I'm going to leave this and I'm going to go to the MLS for a minute. So we would click on the paperclip and I would download these attachments. So now I'm going to go add documents, and this time I'm going to go browse my computer. And I can grab those two. And there's the documents. As I said, you can always rearrange how you like them. You can also rename something. If you don't like the name that somebody's put on it, you can just click on it, hit rename. Say I just want to finish that word because that bugs me. Type that in and then hit enter. Simple, it's fixed. Okay, so I've got my documents that I'm going to be needing. And I look down and check in the documents I need to see if there's anything else, not in this case, that is needed. I'm also going to be required to submit 3 out of the 4 required brokerage documents to my buyer. The 4th form that is required is not this one. We don't put the commission intake form into this. You're going to be signing that commission intake form, but your buyer does not sign that. So please don't put this form into the contract. But before I do that, I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to set up my people. Your people can be set up either here on this screen within the loop by adding a person, or if you had selected the contracts, there's also an autofill feature and you can add a person from there. So what we're going to do here is now I'm going to add my person. I've worked with this buyer before, so I just started typing in the beginning of his name and it popped up. No, you do not add him to your team. That would be only if I was going to be, let's say, co-listing with you and we were going to put you on a listing loop. No, I have to assign his role. He is a buyer. And then I would come in and add person. Also, you'll notice the listing agent on the other side pulled through because I used the MLS number. That's best practices. Grabbing the address off Zillow or Realtor.com, not just randomly typing it on Google. Yes, you can get it that way, but then you won't get the listing agent. So whenever possible, use the MLS number. Did you know that you have a task list built in automatically into the loop once you select our templates? Because you do. See, once you start getting under contract, there's going to be some critical dates. So, for instance, we would have to put in a due date for the escrow deposit receipt. So I would pick a specific date to remind myself once this goes under contract that he's got 3 business days to get that escrow in. And I want a reminder to remind myself to make sure it gets there on time. You can also create your own task. If you click down here on add a task, you can create the task and just hit the enter button and then do the same thing. So that's pretty cool. All right, so we've got my customer in there, and now I'm going to go back and select what I need. Well, I need everything in this sales document form. And I know that I need the affiliate business, I need the sales disclosure, and I need the wire fraud. I am not selecting the commission intake form. I'll explain that form in a moment, but we're not ready for that. Now that I have my forms, what I'm going to do is you'll notice that a bunch of buttons came up, okay? So let me just turn these off for a second. See, there's no buttons up here. There's no logical way to open these forms. Best thing to do is grab all your sales documents, and now the button open is what you're looking for. Once I'm ready, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the open button. here's what's happened. Now you've got the autofill feature overlaying over the top of the contract. So we want to make sure that that we're ready. And on this screen, as I said, you could also add a person to this. Let's say that I realized I forgot to add in my title company agent. So I can add it also from here. I don't have to just go back into the loop on the purple people tab. Sound like I said purple people. Let's go to the title line, and I'm going to add in my title gal. So I'm going to hit select person, add person. And now Karen's been added to the loop. Let's scroll down and see what else we can autofill. So I'm linked to a listing. I'm the buying agent. All right, I can add the purchase sales price. I'm going to do 3% of the purchase price. And closing date and the offer expiration date. Go back and look in the listing if there's anything that you're looking for to include. Like, let's say they want a washer dryer, you put it here. Sometimes there's things you don't want. Maybe there's a rusty refrigerator in the garage. Take care of that. And then if it's missing a legal description, you're going to have to copy and paste it from the tax record. So this is the legal description. All right, we did it. So I go back, I check, view. I got all my players in here, and now you will see that we have the information. Okay, so now you can see that anything in yellow tells you it was auto-filled. All right, this was something like the parties I just copied and pasted from the seller because I'm not representing that side. And then here's the information for the title company that pulled in. You could go back and put in the address and phone number on the contract. And you can see it put in the purchase price, the escrow, the time for acceptance, and all of that. Closing date filled on the other page. We would go through and obviously continue filling out the contract. That is not what this class is about. You will also notice, since I only have one buyer, this only has one initial. If there was more than one buyer, the second buyer would autofill onto the other side and would be there as well, already in the contract. If there was a rider, like there is on this particular contract on Section 19, I do have to make sure that I check that box for condo rider. And then you can see it says Raymond signed here. My info's come through. The agent on the other side is already there. As I said, I like to use a buyer-broker agreement, and I would fill this out and take care of all of that. And you can also notice that it says broker and sales associate. So in this case, you can see it's auto-filled, so I can actually go here and actually sign it right now. So let me do that. What it does is it tells me to adopt a signature, which is way nicer than my signature in real life, and I can get that signed. So, as I said, if you're going to do this, you're going to take care of that. Just go through and sign. As well as if there's a signature, you will do that. You notice it's time stamped and dated, which is great. And don't forget, always look. There's lots of signatures. So let's get to another trick that you're going to need to do. All right. So you can see up top here, I've got a lot of choices under file. All right. But what I don't see is what I'm really looking for, which I need to drag and drop initials onto this form. Why? Because this is the condo writer that I downloaded, and it doesn't have the initials automatically on here because it's not our form. It didn't come from us and our company. So in that case, don't go under File, don't go under Autofill, don't go under More. No, you got to go under Add. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to drag and drop signatures. So we go to Add Signatures, and you'll see the little box kind of follows my cursor. Woo! And then we're going to drag and drop and go to Add Initials. When I did that, you'll notice it'll say, it goes initial here, and then when I hover over it, I got two choices, assign field or sign now. We have to assign the field to my buyer, Ramon. We're going to assign the field, and now we're going to click on our buyer. And there we have it. So you would always look through a form like this to see if there's additional signature blocks, which there are not on this particular one. But then there's going to be another form in here where I'm going to have to drag and drop a signature. And that's because we've got to add the buyer signature. So I would do the same thing, but this time for a signature, add signature, assign field, choose my buyer. There are four required documents that are LPT documents, but only 3 go to your buyer. If you've noticed, I've repeated that twice now, maybe 3 times. You're going to have your buyer fill out the affiliated business arrangement disclosure. You're going to also have them sign the wire fraud notice. We do not use the Florida Realtor one, and you can see the signature blocks are already there, so you won't have to drag and drop for this one. And then the LPT Realty form. And this is where you would also type in the transaction fee of $195 to LPT Realty. And that's it. That would be the extent of my contract. Now, if I filled it all out and I was ready to rock it over to Ramon, I would click Save and Share. But I learned a long time ago of the value of proofreading. So I never do that. That's me personally. However, if internet is acting weird like it is today, I want to hit save to make sure that all that work I just did doesn't get lost. Whether you decide to just go for it and save and share or save, it will save in there. But I'm going to just show you what it looks like to just save it before sending it. Now, of course, it says you've got this button changes to share. I can also get back into my loop by going here. And then it says, these documents have not been shared. Would you like to share them? And I say no again. But you can run your business how you want to run your business, right? So once you're in here, now if I was ready, and let's say I proofread everything, I was comfortable, but I wanted to now share it with my buyer to get him to sign, then what I would do is I would select the sales documents, and then I would not open, but this time I would share. And remember, you got to get the 3 LPT documents, not the commission intake form, and then you would hit share. This will show you all the things that are going to be sent over to my buyer. Now, you notice it doesn't send it over to the title company or the listing agent because we're not ready for that step. And once I'm ready, I would just hit the share button. Now, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to send over this contract. The contract, I want to proofread. I'm not ready. But I do want to show you a couple other things. You'll notice that there is a drop down to the sign next to my customer. I could send the contract to him over the first time, maybe view only, just to make sure that my buyer approves of it. Or if I wanted to send it over to a seller said they wanted to look over the contract the way I've written it before they'll agree to sign it. So I could send it that way. Another handy dandy thing that could come in handy is, let's pretend that I was not writing a buyer contract today, but I was working with a seller. And the most annoying document I find is the seller's disclosures, when they all seem to be many times sent over to me by agents that it looks like they were hand filled out. The reason that is because many of them agents don't know this trick. If you want to send a seller's disclosure over and you want them to be able to check those boxes and type on the document, you need to send that document differently. Not just can sign, but can fill and sign. That's the better option. Now I'm going to turn this off for a minute. And let's go to the listing agent. If we were to send it over to the listing agent, what option comes up? Well, it typically defaults to can edit in private. I'm not a big fan of that because it can lock up the loop. So if I send a contract over to her, I will send it usually view only, or can fill and sign if there's a document that she has to fill out, like the lead paint form. So for that situation, that's what we would do. But as I said, I'm not ready to do this right now. When you do send a document over, all right, it will say waiting. It will say in yellow, waiting on others, and then eventually it will say signed. Now let's fast forward a bit and let's pretend that we have gotten under contract. We've got an executory contract. What would I need to do after that? Well, what you would have to do is you would have to change it from pre-offer to under contract. And if we agree to that price, that's what it's going to pop up at. Or you would fill it in and type it in what they agreed to. Once it goes under contract, we need to know that you're under contract. It's so important that you put in a closing date on your contract. That, along with submitting the documents up here to submit to review, will trigger that you are under contract and will start the ball rolling with compliance communicating with you. You will also see notifications start to appear. You might even see some notes coming back and forth, but you will also receive emails from LPT Realty. So how do I submit my contract for review? Well, I'm going to submit all my sales documents, and I'm not ready to fill out my commission intake form yet, but I'm going to submit at that stage. All right, so we're pending the signed documents. Now, of course, I would never submit this for review without my, a signed contract. But once I'm ready, I would select those documents, and I'll come up here and I'll submit to review. And then in order to select the file folders, so I would have sales documents and requirement documents in my case that I would want to submit. So if you notice over here, look, the 4 are checked, but it's not submitted. So until I click sales document and then hit submit, then that will change. And instead of it saying not submitted in red, it will say submitted. So you'll know that you turned it in. So that's the only place. No, you don't put in a support ticket. You don't attach it as an email. You don't need to phone the office. You need to submit to review. I would also, in real business practices, once I get an executory contract, go look for those critical dates and go put in dates to remind me of when the escrow is due or any of those different forms so that I keep organized. Now let's move on, and let's say it's getting close to that closing at the end of November, and I want to get paid at the closing table, and I did the right thing. I filled out my W-9. I even have direct deposit, so I don't even have to have a check to drag to the bank. Cool. So how do I get paid? Well, if you're new to the real estate world, one of the ways to get paid is a notice has to be delivered to the title company or the attorney that's closing it, called in short a DA, or is a disbursement authorization. That it basically allows you to them to disperse the funds directly to you, not to the brokerage. But before that can be authorized, we need a lot of information from you about the file. So you could go and hover and click right now on the commission intake form, or you could checkbox it and click open. And I would suggest that you do use the autofill feature. I already started filling out this form by using the autofill feature. So 7 business days before it's actually going to close. So this is a little early to be filling this form out for this, but let's just stretch reality, and we really needed to do it today. We would select the date, fill it out. We would put in the commission rate, we would need to go look in the MLS and see, do they, is it a certain amount of percentage or a flat fee? And sometimes there's a negative or MLS fee. So in other words, the agent on the side might be charging me $300. So it might be X percentage minus $300. So that I would have to put in a negative, and that comes out of my commission. Type of sale, in this case, you can click in the box and we know it's a condo. And then we start going in here, and then of course you can fill in your information, the name of the title company. In my case is Integrity. I'm going to have to go back and copy and paste in that seller's name, because I auto-filled and picked this from the templates. It already knows I'm representing the buyer. If I have a transaction fee, so let's say I had a transaction coordinator and I pay her $300, I could add that $300 transaction fee plus the $195, and that would go in this box. And then who's going to pay for the $195 fee? We have to know, all right, who's going to take care of that transaction fee. Again, anything else, if, for instance, if I was offering my buyer a credit back at closing for some reason, it would go in there. But again, you're going to have to, there's a form you're going to have to fill out that will be back in the templates that you would have to send over early for if you're going to be doing a realtor credit. If you're on a team, well, good news. Whoever is running the team, who is their assistant, will probably fill out all this stuff for you. And then over here, if you have a referral, so let's say that this buyer was referred to me by an outside agent up in Ohio. Well, then I pay that Ohio agent a referral. But let's say that this was a referral from an agent from LPT that referred this customer to me. That would be for an inside LPT agent referral. And then, of course, there is the ability to create notes. So I'm just going to save it, and then I'm going to get back into my loop. When I'm ready, I would then go back, and I would separately submit my commission intake form. And I don't share it. Where do I go? Who do I send it to? Submit to review. Right? So that's where I can get that set up. Last but not least, don't forget to fill out your account with your information in here. And note this. At the bottom of your loop is the links to the Help Center for Dotloop, the calling Dotloop, and the member ID number that's associated. So if you're having technical issues with Dotloop, that's who you call. If you are having a compliance issue or a DA issue, then you're going to go to LPT Connect, click on the support tile, and start a ticket. Click on Start Ticket, drop down the departments, and again, if it's just, hey, did I do my file, is my file coming along correctly? I would send it to compliance support. If it was filled out your DA and you hadn't heard from anybody, or you've got an issue with your DA, then it would be DA review. All right. So just continue. You would fill out the ticket and then submit a ticket for us. But if it's a technical issue with Dotloop, please, down at the bottom, call the 888-368-5667. It's also a good idea to take down your member ID number so that when you call in for tech help, you get someone to work on the file without any problems. One last topic before I go. If you're concerned about, well, how am I going to make sure that I'm in compliance and what needs compliance for what files and how to do all of that? Well, there's two ways that you can find out about things for compliance. One, if you come into the Add Documents area, right, and go into Templates, if you scroll down, you're going to see some more folders, including one called Compliance. In the Compliance folder, what you will see is broker credit letters for selling side and listing side. So in other words, if you're going to give a credit back at closing of $500 out of your commission. That letter will have to be filled out, so you'll find that in the compliance to do that before you can fill out your DA in that situation. But there's also a handy dandy little checklist. So let's upload that so you can quickly look at it, and let's hit OK. And I'm going to just open that up for you. So this is the example of the compliance checklist, and anything that's in pink would be a requirement. Blue is going to be if applicable. Obviously, you can't fill out an HOA form if your home is not in an HOA. And then in yellow, we put in best practices. You can also find this compliance checklist in another place, in LPT Connect. Just go to Education and then go into the knowledge base, and you'll actually see that the compliance lives in this area where you can get the compliance checklist as well. Last but not least, if you're looking for more help, Dotloop also has its link down here to the Help Center. And in here, once again, you can watch or look at articles, get more training, and you can even find on-demand webinars right at your fingertips. So ladies and gentlemen, this is your contract to close management system for your contracts here in Dotloop with e-signature and more. And I wish you the best of luck with your career and happy looping.